Brad Garlinghouse, who runs Ripple, just did his best interview ever. A reporter named Eleanor Tarrant from Crypto America asked him all the important questions. We're going to watch the best parts from the interview, and I'll tell you what I think. This is what I've been waiting for months and months. I'm super excited about this moment. I knew at the Swell event we were going to get some Brad Garlinghouse videos. This is my absolute favorite. You know that deep down in my heart I want to interview Brad. That's my top goal for this channel. One day we'll be big enough. Let's just get into it, guys. You know, you recently said in a tweet, XRP sits at the center of everything Ripple does. Can you kind of explain what you meant by that? Well, I think people don't understand this, but first of all, I think we can all agree there's a lot of wrong information and sometimes fake news on crypto Twitter. Yeah, that's not great for anybody. I sometimes think people like to paint a picture that Ripple has given up on XRP, right? I mean, that just doesn't make sense. For a whole bunch of reasons. One is, let me clear it up. Well, for me, that tweet was trying to say, let's be very clear when we think about treasury. Okay, so Ripple wants to be a company that helps manage money, and we can now offer things like Ripple payments. Some of those use stablecoins, some use XRP. And that depends on where you're sending money. It depends on what type of money you're using. We want to give the best possible product to a customer at the best price. And sometimes that may be a stablecoin. Sometimes it may not. And people, honestly, something that's not well known to your audience. There was a time when Ripple was making in 2023, the first part of 2023, Ripple was making 20% of all USDC. That's because we were doing big business payment transfers. And we used USDC. We also used USDC. We also used XRP. I don't look at the world and say, well, you know, we are not XRP lovers only. There's going to be different blockchains for different solutions and different technologies. I think we have to start, and I mean this for when I say we, I mean the whole crypto industry has to start with what problem and for what customer are we solving. If we just try to, it's like, hey, I have a technology and I just want to use it on a customer. It's like, well, a customer doesn't think about it that way. A customer has a problem. How do we use the right technologies? XRP is very fast to grow. Very fast and very cheap for each transaction. That makes it good for some things and probably less good for other things. That's okay. And Ripple will use other technologies in those situations. But if Ripple can go from, you know, managing tens of billions of dollars of payment transactions to hundreds of billions of dollars of payments transactions to trillions of dollars, and if XRP doesn't have 100% of that pie, but the pie is growing very quickly, like that's great. Yeah, I'm happy. That's a really good place to be. Brad Garlinghouse is just kind of laying it all out there. Some technologies are going to be better for stablecoins. Some technology is going to be better for XRP. And some technology will be better for other things that they use. So I'm totally fine with this. Brad is kind of setting the record straight, letting us know that deep down XRP is extremely important to Ripple's business, and it will continue to be the center point. All right, let's continue with this interview, guys. Let's go. If you guys love the content, man, show your support. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think about this interview. I want to hear from you. All right, you know what? It's more peaceful times. I kind of come around to like, I love the XRP army. We were attacked and I don't just mean by the SEC, like, you know, the whole world, there are those who are super fans of their particular favorite coin. I respect that as long as people are being kind of constructive and honest and not spreading fake news. I'm like, okay, fair enough. We can disagree. I try genuinely to support, and I think the whole industry benefits if we kind of get behind the industry instead of fighting about how big my piece of the pie is. Think about how big the pie is. Absolutely. I think it's really interesting because the XRP family community, whatever we want to call it, is extremely loyal, and they are very loud as well. And a lot of communities out there or token makers wish they could create that. What do you think kind of started that and caused, and like what have you contributed to it, or Ripple as a whole? Yeah, by the way, I think this is a great question. I wish I could point to here's an answer. I'm curious as well, honestly. Well, look, unfortunately, you're not going to get a great answer because I don't know, and I think there should be studies on this. Yeah, they're probably, it's a fascinating, like in terms of, I went to Harvard Business School. You do case studies about things like, it would be fascinating and I don't have a perfect answer. I do think the psychology of people like to be part of the underdog. They want to support the underdog. And almost from the beginning, you know, Ripple took a slightly different view around crypto. XRP took a different way to validate transactions that wasn't proof of work. That was controversial, that was different. The way it was distributed was controversial and different. The choice of deciding, hey, we're going to partner with banks. I mean, people would call XRP the bank coin. Those were all things that were different at the time. Then you get attacked by, some of the existing players. You get attacked by the SEC, and it has made a tough group. And I think, look, Ripple has tried, and I think this was even today, is still a little different. Ripple has always tried to be super open about our role within the XRP world, how much XRP we own. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that frustratingly the SEC used against us. Like, we were the most open. The SEC demands being open. Some cryptos aren't open at all. We're open, and the SEC uses that against us to sue us. You're like, come in and register and leave with a warning letter that yeah, there's a lot of stuff that was super frustrating about that. It just doesn't feel like that part of that government agency was acting in good faith. Yeah. And I think people, I don't know if I've shared a lot of this, but I personally went into the SEC. I didn't go with lawyers because I was just talking about how we're using our technologies. Not once did anyone suggest that these are securities, but you go in over years and you're talking about what you're doing. Not once did someone say to me, hey, we think XRP might be a security. You might want to change how you're doing things. And then years later to sue not just Ripple, but to sue me personally, because to sue someone personally, it has to be, I knew that it was a security and behaved that way anyway. And it's like, well, you didn't even know it was a security and that was just bullying. Yeah, I mean, luckily Ripple was in a position and we had the strength to kind of fight that fight. But, that's not how our government should work together in any situation, I don't think. Have you guys had in this sort of government change because you launched so many licensed or trading related products? Have you guys had good conversations with the task force, Chair Atkins, Tester Cruz, all those folks? What have those conversations been like? I mean, again, kind of the mind-bending experience. I'll give you kind of two quick stories. So, as I said, I'd gone into the SEC's office multiple times before the lawsuit, and then for, 4 or 5 years did not. We were invited back to speak to the task force. It was a little bit weird to go back in, but I'll tell you, the task force could not have been more welcoming, helpful, open, genuinely really interested and curious in some of our thoughts, given our experience. And to some degree that culminated. Paul Atkins, after taking his position, he reached out to me and was like, hey, I'd love to, just chat. And, to me that we should have a government who, by the way, I'm not even sure if Paul Atkins and I agree on everything, but nothing came up that we disagreed on that I know of, but but the fact that he was interested in meeting, I think, it's just a night and day difference as opposed to being afraid of government. We couldn't get meetings with anybody in government for years. And then you have the new chair kind of reaching out and hey, we can learn from each other here. So a few things here. The beginning of the clip talked about the XRP army and the support and just how all of this came about, right? How do you have one of the most supportive groups in crypto period? The XRP army is a special group of people. You and I are a part of something here that most people don't fully understand, right? We can see the future. That is what we believe. We know the technology and what it does. We know that financial institutions want to use this technology because they have to, they're forced to, because people demand cheaper, instant, transparent payments. And for decades, we didn't have that. And now Ripple and the circles of the world have come in and really shown us what is possible. And we will go to battle for Ripple. We will go to battle for each other. And that is something I consider extremely special, right? I look out, I live stream, I answer as many questions from just people I don't even know, random people, because we all are here to support each other, to grow together. And hopefully, right, we reach that point where we don't have to worry about finances anymore, right? Our XRP eventually will reach a useful price and bam, we won't have to worry about things. That is what we have put everything in our lives on hold so we can better understand this, so we can be prepared for this financial change. And it's just powerful. Remember, support each other out here. If people are going to come in from other communities and attack us, let's shower them with facts and not disrespect. Let's be better if we can and, set a standard. I think all of us can set a higher standard, and that's what I'm trying to do myself too. All right, let's see here. One of the other parts here was talking about regulation and how Brad opened up some eyes and kind of what his experience was actually dealing with the last government administration, going in and having open, honest conversations without attorneys, only to have them use all of that against him. I mean, man, I don't know what kind of stress and all of the emotional toll that those last, 4 years put on Brad and Ripple, the company, but we are stronger for it. And just, my hats are off to them for fighting the good fight, and all of you for supporting Ripple through this trying time in XRP. That's huge. All right, let's continue here. Digital Asset Investors says, remember the crypto market today is 3.37 trillion, and we've only had a tiny handful of crypto IPOs. At its peak in 1990 and 2000 dot-com bubble, it was around 7 trillion. In today's dollars, that's 12.8 trillion. So he's saying there's a lot of growth still to happen. I see a lot of similarities between, the dot-com boom and crash and what's going on in crypto. So I moved to Silicon Valley in 1997, had gotten involved in the internet very early. Whole story behind that of in 1994 learning what an IP address was, which was nice, but I still remember the moment kind of thing. And, I think anytime there's a new technology change, you get a lot of excitement about it. Understandable, and people see the opportunity of, well, what if, and then so a lot of money comes in, a lot of business people come in, and in that case, in contrast to this, the US actually did provide clear rules. And in 1996 passed the Telecom Regulation Act, which provided a whole bunch of structure for Al Gore to invent the internet. That's a joke, sorry. But I think that you had all this money come in, and it kind of, frankly, the excitement got ahead of the reality, to be honest. And certainly that was true in the internet space, and you had the boom and then a big crash. And I think there are aspects of that in crypto that have been similar. You guys have all been around this space for a while, and you certainly saw, kind of an ICO craze, an NFT craze. And that isn't to say that ICOs don't have some potential value or NFTs don't have some potential value. The excitement got ahead of the reality, and you go through these boom and crash cycles. It to me feels different than the internet directly, but I think the excitement about how these technologies can be used to make financial systems more efficient. Certainly where Ripple's focused, and people should be excited about that. But doing that at kind of a moderate pace as to what change management, particularly for careful financial institutions, is something that we have to be thoughtful about. But it's one of the reasons why I'm exceptionally excited about the next 10 years, because I think, a lot of foundation has been laid, and I'm sure there'll be other, cycles along the way here. But overall, I'm excited. All right, and then we got one more clip here. Let me play this. They tried to destroy Ripple by using transparency against it while letting their shady friends who came to hide everything slide. Let me play it. Transparent about, how we think about our holdings of XRP. I mean, we're public with what wallets Ripple controls, and people can track that stuff, more easily than other projects. And again, I like to support all projects, so I'm not going to pick on any here. But, people have chosen to be more secretive. And even when I remember being interviewed on a panel years ago, and, a fellow CEO, asking question like, well, wait a minute, we do share all this. How about you share this? And, he didn't want to share that information. You're like, wait a minute, like, you can't have it both ways. We actually own about 13%, but you do sell it regularly, right? Don't you sell it? Tell me about that. How much do you sell when necessary? The Joseph Lubin there, you know what? Not going to do it. Not going to do it. Rise above. Let's set a standard. I also did a full breakdown of Brad Garlinghouse interviewing Patrick Witt. This was actually a really great interview. Brad is the interviewer. He's interviewing Patrick Witt, who is in charge of the Crypto Council, the White House task force. And it does look like this person particularly is helping to move the ball forward here with crypto in the United States, and actually has a very interesting life. I thought it was a great interview. So if you want to have the full interview, that will be on my channel here in the next day or two. It should be on my channel on Thursday. I've created now 12 videos so far in the last 2 days. So there's a lot of content coming. I'm trying to keep up with it all so I can keep you updated. Here's a 2-minute segment from this different interview. You are in a very interesting seat. You're seeing lots of things. I think it would have been difficult, as you just described, to predict certain outcomes of how the internet has evolved. And the Telecom Deregulation Act clearly didn't think of everything, but yet here we are with you can, on demand use a mobile device over IP networks to have ice cream delivered on stage, probably. Sounds kind of good, but I'm curious. Can you make a prediction or two? It could, whether it's policy-based, I guess I'll try to put you on the spot and you predict when will we get a market structure bill through. But also I'm curious on your kind of crypto predictions more broadly, and I realize I'm putting you on the spot, and that's a hard thing to know given everything's been shut down. Yeah, this was at the end of the interview, if you're wondering where this clip came from and what have you, but you guys are doing good work there, and I think, I'm an optimist. Anyway, predictions for the industry. I think as far as the market structure bill goes, we are maintaining, before the end of the year. The president wants that piece of legislation on his desk, so we're continuing to apply pressure, having regular meetings. I spend most of my time on Capitol Hill these days, meeting with senators from both sides to get that done. I'm optimistic that we've seen enough progress recently to where the trend line is moving in the right direction, and I think we're going to get a good piece of legislation done and over to the president for signature in short order. We heard it here. By the end of the year, we're in. There you go. And the other thing I would say, maybe I'll take an easy out. I'm not going to predict, I'm not going to be the tough interviewer. I've been on the receiving end too many times. Yeah, right. I would just say the future is very bright for this industry. And there are, companies that are going to, start up here in the space that probably aren't even in existence yet. And there's going to be just amazing, efficiencies unlocked. It's going to integrate into the existing financial system. Stablecoins are going to spread around the globe. So I think you're going to be talking about, market cap into the, tens of trillions, even beyond what it is right now at 4 or 5 trillion. So, there's going to be growth. There's going to be a lot of innovation in the space. And, there's going to be a lot of players that come into existence that aren't even, built right now. Wow. This was a great interview by Eleanor Terrett and her team at Crypto America. I learned a ton of new things here. I hope you did too, guys. If you got any value, please let me know down in the comments. You can like the video, you can share the video with a friend or family member. I appreciate your time. Thank you for being here. Let's continue to grow, work together, and eventually we are going to have the biggest party Hawaii has ever seen. When XRP truly takes off, you are all invited. Looking forward to seeing you guys in person. Crypto Sensei, aloha, peace.